All right, the Chicago Bears had a draft, and it was very exciting early on. And that's all they really did. They didn't do a lot late because their last pick was 144, which is kind of wild. That they had, not a ton of draft picks, and again, they have made their trades in the past, obviously, to get certain players, so that's a part of it. Like, of course, the Montez Sweat pick. So in some ways, you almost have to throw Montez Sweat onto this, but then I guess you got to get rid of last year's first overall pick. It's a whole thing, but if you think that far, but they had 5 picks. Let's talk about what they did with those 5 picks. First, Caleb Williams at 1, which, that's going to make or break this draft. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on with these other picks, but at the end of the day, there is no scenario where Caleb Williams hits and is awesome, and you look back at this and consider it a bad draft. There is no scenario where Caleb Williams stinks that you look back at this and say, well, this was a great draft. Like, it's all on Caleb Williams, and I think it's going to be really good. You never know with young quarterbacks. You never do know. The one thing I would say is that something that does help the odds of young quarterbacks is if they're going to a good situation. I think Caleb Williams is going to a good situation in Chicago. I think they've done a lot of great stuff to make the situation around him as good as possible. Another thing that helps out young quarterbacks is guys who are drafted first overall actually have a pretty significantly higher hit rate. It's usually you say first round quarterbacks is like 1 in 3, but actually for first rounders who are picked first overall, it's almost 1 in 2. It's almost 50%. So adding a couple of things to help him out, and on top of it, people view him, and I view him. I've said this. I've been doing this for like 5 years now. He's the best quarterback I've ever evaluated. So I really think he's very good. No guarantees, but some of the stuff he can do for Chicago is unreal. And he's going to a good situation, as I mentioned, with Rome Odunze falling to 9, which I got to say, listen, there were other players I liked more than Odunze as well, but I think the fact that he fell all the way to 9 is a bit crazy. I don't get how this happens, and I think teams were drafting for need, teams were drafting quarterbacks, and they said, thank you very much, teams doing that. For example, I think Tennessee probably should have taken him, even though they needed an offensive line, because, he's just the better player. Sometimes just get a good player. And for Chicago, I don't even know if they're like, well, we need a wide receiver. Who are the wide receivers available? I think they might have been willing to go a different direction if it wasn't right. I think they just liked Odunze. At least that's what I would have done, because, you look at their receiving core now. I mean, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Odunze, I think the questions you have are I do think Odunze is more of an outside guy. Are you going to put Allen in the slot, or are you kind of just going to shift all of them and have them play in the slot at different times? I don't know, because again, it's not like Madden where you kind of just play them wherever. There are positions when it comes to wide receiver. But that being said, I think that he is someone who, if he has to play in the slot, he could do it, right? In a similar way we see Mike Evans sometimes play out of the slot. It is something you can do, although I do like him best as an outside guy. And hey, having a guy with a big catch radius the way he does, not the worst thing in the world for a young quarterback bailing them out sometimes if they don't get the timing exactly down at the NFL level. That could be super cool. And just, again, helping out your young quarterback, making that situation as good as possible. Maybe they would have liked an offensive lineman here. Sure, I can certainly see it. But, again, you got to get the best player available. And I don't think their offensive line is as bad as people make it out to be either. Although I still think it could use some help. And especially with how Williams loves to hold on to the football, there could be some issues there. But, as a whole, huge fan of these top 2 picks. Could be a franchise-altering top 2 picks. Then we move on. Well, okay, it's the first, you have Kyrian, that's a tough last name to pronounce right here, but he's someone who, so they drafted him at pick, 75. I forgot to set up this chart. The chart, what you see on the screen is, all the way at the left is when they were drafted. Next number over is when they were projected to be drafted. We then have their position all the way at the end. Kyrian, A, we'll call him, a weird prospect, I think. So he was projected to go around this time. The tape is good. It is. He is someone who I evaluated. He did not make any of my top offensive line list because, the tape is quality. It's for sure is quality. he played at Yale. So it's like anytime you get one of these players who didn't play at the highest level of competition, what do you make of that? What do you think of these types of players? He's smart, I guess. You got that going for you. Last year, his tape was easily the best we've seen, but it was only for 230 snaps. So that's a little concerning. He's a wild card to me. He's a complete wild card. I don't know what to make of him. I think that there is a lot of really good qualities in him. I just, again, I have no idea to know if some of these things will work at the next level or not. But if it does work, there is potential that you got like a starting level offensive lineman at pick 75, which would be pretty awesome. Pick 122, I don't like this pick. I just don't. I'm never going to like this pick. If you're defending it, like I've heard all the arguments to the contrary already. A Tory Taylor punter goes at 122, which it's just, the reality is the most a punter can be. I kind of did a video on like what's the maximum a punter could be worth. You take like the worst punter and the best punter and flip them around. Like what's the difference there? And it was about $3 million worth of cap space, which to save essentially $2 million, because lowest you can pay a player is basically $1 million. You're saving $2 million at best with a player like this. It's not that there's no value. There's just very little value in the punter position. And again, that's honestly giving credit to just the punter, which probably isn't fair because there's, other special teamers that make a difference here. So, I know people really like him as a punter. It's just, I think that there's bigger needs for this team, and they have only 5 picks. So essentially lighting one of these picks on fire for me, I shouldn't say that. Getting a good player at not a very valuable position for me is a luxury pick you should only really do if you have a complete roster and a lot of picks, which is not the case with the with them. So wasn't crazy about this pick, and that's kind of why I didn't love the later picks they had. Then we can go to Austin Booker, who I actually really like. I think he's interesting. So he was projected to go 75th. They got him at 144. That alone you like. Although it is worth mentioning that, when a player is when you reach on a player, usually that ends up being a reach. Usually they were, end up not being as good as what you were when they were drafted. And like the way I'm trying to say it is, if you draft a player who was supposed to go at pick 100 at pick 50, usually they play like a guy who was supposed to go at 100. When a player is supposed to go at 75 and falls to 144, they oftentimes still end up playing like a guy who was supposed to go at 144 just because, usually the NFL knows something at that point. Usually there's a reason why they fell. Whereas, all it takes is one team to kind of make a dumb decision for a reach to happen. For a fall, it's different. So that being said, I don't really know what it would. I mean, Booker doesn't have a ton of playing time. That's what kind of jumps out at you. The guy has like 500 career college snaps. So that's concerning. And they were basically all last year. They were good though. A little bit skinny, 6'6", 245. I guess that's concerning, but I don't know. Gets consistent wins. Pick 144. Sign me up. That's a good pick. So again, to me, 2 home runs, a big wild card with Kyrian a bad pick, in my opinion, based on what I would do with the punter, even though he'll be a good punter for them probably. And then, a really strong flyer on someone like Booker who, maybe he's just a pass rush specialist or something like that. Hey, that's valuable too. If he's just a third down pass rusher at pick 144, you'll certainly take that. So, as a whole, good draft by the Bears. Great draft by the Bears. What am I saying? This is amazing. Bears fans got to be thrilled with what happened. Bears fans, that's what I think. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.